To identify sources and assess the risks of food safety contamination on your farm, begin by focusing your food safety lenses on the farmland itself. What's the history of your land and how are you using it? Is it hilly? Is it flat? Are there woods? Are there wetlands? And do any of these physical features help to reduce risks? What are the activities going on in your operation and on the surrounding properties that may pose a risk? Another important factor is the products you are adding to your soil. Are you using raw or composted manure? Are you making it yourself or buying in from a trusted supplier? And does manure storage pose any risk of runoff into crops, drive lanes, or waterways? We're here in Kempton, Pennsylvania at Red Earth Farm with Kim Butts, the farm manager. Kim, do you want to tell us about the farm, the history and what it is you're growing here and how much of it?
Sure. The farm is owned by Karis and Michael and their family. It's 90 acres total. We farm on approximately 35. We use sustainable practice and we grow pretty much everything. So, you know, strawberries to cabbages to broccoli. We run the gamut. So if you can think of it, we pretty much grow it here on the farm.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Parks. I'm the executive director here at the Seed Farm in Upper Milford Township. The Seed Farm is a nonprofit organization that was incorporated in 2010. It was originally started as a collaboration between Lehigh County and Penn State Extension as an effort to cultivate the next generation of farmers to take over all of the preserved farmland here in Lehigh County.
Hi, I'm Tara Brownback, Spiral Path Farm. We're a certified organic farm since 1994. My husband Mike and I moved here in 1978 to begin our venture as farmers. Since then, we have 300 acres under our production. About 100 of those are in certified organic produce. The rest is in compost and hay fields.
We're really blessed on our particular farm that we have woods around. Virtually 90% of our farm has a woodland buffer. For us, the woodland buffer is really important because it gives us some degree of isolation. It minimizes our susceptibility to spray drift. One of the big issues in agriculture today is spray drift.
When you first came to the farm and you were thinking about food safety risks, what did you think about?
You know, in starting the plan, some of the things that we had to think about was, was runoff. Where was everything placed? How were the fields going to be set up? We did have to change a few things down closer to the farm. We had manure at the start when I started. We had mushroom soil. We had the compost. So we did have to kind of look at that from a different perspective with the rules and regulations of FSMA. So we did move the chicken manure to a location on the bottom of the farm.
So it was downhill from
So
all
it was
the crops.
downhill and any kind of runoff was eliminated into any of the fields. We also eliminated the tractors running through that and then cross-contaminating into the fields.
So that's a really important point, that you don't have vehicles and people's feet going
Correct.
through areas that might have raw manure or uncomposted
Correct.
raw
And
manure.
it's not something you think of. So, you're in your daily activities, and as you're doing your daily activities, you're running the tractors through, you're running the golf cart through, people are walking to dump canisters, and you don't realize that then you're walking back into, the pack house where there's food production going on. So these are all things that, essentially, walking around, looking, reading the rules and regulations of FSMA, the light bulbs started going off per se. The compost, mushroom compost that we use, typically that wouldn't be here at this point in the season, but because it's organic matter, it's okay where it's at this point.
So it's treated organic compost.
That's
and it's
correct.
actually organic certified?
It is certified, but not organic. So
Okay.
it's been certified from the mushroom company itself and is free and clear. So
So it's free and clear of any biological contaminants.
Correct.
From animal
Heat-treated.
manure. It's heat treated, that's right.
Correct.
And you typically get a certificate of assurance from the mushroom
That's correct.
compost supplier.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, and that's required for FSMA, so that is part of the documentation process.
The food safety component is rather obvious, By taking waste products, by taking products that are already on the farm, by converting them to something highly usable, that process in itself is minimizing risk, because instead of this pile sitting here and festering or having to be hauled somewhere else, it's actually bioconverted by living organisms into something that's safe. And by the heating process, even though there's no animal manure in it, we're turning this into basically a very hygienic product.
Lindsay, who owns this land and who's responsible for the waste management on the land?
That would be Lehigh County. We lease from them.
And so they manage the septic system?
Yes,
And do they also manage the porta potty?
they do.
They do.
Yes,
So you're at their mercy, basically.
right.
Now, in your situation, you don't have any control over it. The land is owned by the county, and the septic system presumably is managed by the county.
Correct.
So you may have to speak with them to find out, is it ever getting pumped out? Is it ever getting checked? Is it ever getting serviced? Because it's important for you to know, if you have any problems, who do you call and who's responsible.
Right.
And also you want to think about where the septic system is situated in relationship to the beds, the produce that's grown. Now, from what I can see from here is you have a large area of grass between here and any beds.
Yes.
You also have a flower growing operation between here and any produce, any food that's been grown. So there's a fair amount of buffer zone. If you do have a leak, it's unlikely to get all the way to where the produce is being grown.
Right.
Since you have people farming on this land, it would be very important for you to be in contact with them about it, to make sure that the septic system is being monitored properly, and to know who you would call if you had any kind of problem. Do you know who you would call if you had a problem?
Well, I would contact our contacts in the county, and then they would direct us to the person we need to talk to.
It would be a good idea for you to have some kind of standard operating procedure in place if you thought that the septic system wasn't functioning properly. Have a list of the people you need to call. Find out from the county who would come out and manage the problem for you. So you need to have someone who can bring sandbags or hay bales or something to prevent leakage. Someone who can come and remove the contaminants and replace it with new soil or new sand in this case.
Right.
Here we have a fuel tank on the farm, which is definitely one of those things you have to think about for chemical contamination. So Kim, tell us about why it is where it is and how it's set up.
Sure. So this is our propane. It's utilized to heat the nursery in the very early stages when we're planting in February. And so it's located away from the nursery. It's on its own bed with stones as a catch-all. Potential contamination in the event of some kind of compromise to just the number one greenhouse. We have a little bit of play here with the rock bed to kind of mitigate any contaminant into the greenhouse.
Here we're inside a permanent structure, a greenhouse on Red Earth Farm. And you can see that it is really tidy. Quite often when I walk into greenhouses, there are piles of old drip tape or sacks, all kinds of debris. And there's some weeds, but otherwise it's a very clean greenhouse.
This is an example of some of our fall cropping systems. You'll see that we have this field here happens to be lacinato kale. Behind it in the background you'll see some collards. But you'll also notice within these fields, that's not all weeds in those fields, that's all intentionally seeded cover crops. The intentionally seeded cover crops in here are crimson clover, hairy vetch, and some rye. And what that does is, it does a number of things. It protects the soil from the heavy rains. We've had a terrible amount of rain this year, but it also creates a really clean environment for my harvesters to come in. So my field workers, when they come in, they've got a nice carpet of cover crop to work on, particularly late October, November when it starts getting really muddy. We also, you'll see between our crops, you'll see we have field rows. Our fields are basically 8-row fields. It works well for our spray system. And between every field we have a road. We have a road at least 10 feet wide. It's in permanent sod, so we don't rotate our roads. That stays as a permanent sod. A year like this, when we had some weeks with 10 inches of rain, there's no way we could drive in our fields to spray or harvest, but we can always drive through our field roads, and they seem to hold up to the traffic that way.